Okay, start talking.
Oh, we're talking.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this with me.
That's very fun.
I feel like you just upped the intellectual capital.
That's hardly. You've got the style.
I don't know. Because left to my own devices, this would be some Zach Galactic. How are you saying that guy's name?
Yeah.
Between two ferns. Between
Like,
two sides. Yeah, yeah.
I could do it.
All right, we're on.
Alright. Well, hello. I'm Lauren McGowan, the Senior Director of Ending Homelessness at United Way of King County. And I'm here today with Jonathan Spots. I can't even pronounce your
That's
name
okay.
at the moment.
Sposato. My mother can't pronounce it. So no worries at all. Sposato. Yeah.
Together, we're here to talk and respond a little bit to the Seattle is Dying piece that is really had our community talking all over the place. And hopefully we'll get some great questions from folks out in the community and be able to share both some of our opinions and some of the data and facts about homelessness.
Yeah, that's right. Looking forward to a really robust discussion. I know that this has been incredibly sort of a lightning rod really for the community lately, and that's ultimately a good thing. I'm actually really glad that it's helping to catalyze conversation, to surface some of the complexity of the situation in our community, to really shine a spotlight on things that are not simple. I know optically some things look like they're simple, and we just want a simple solution. It's kind of how our brains are wired, but I think there's a lot of, we can have a very data-driven, clarifying conversation about some of this stuff.
You bet. And I think the most important thing to remember is these are people's lives.
Yeah,
We have 12,000 people in our region experiencing homelessness. Too many of them are people of color, and each one of them has a story.
Yeah.
And I want to find solutions for all of them.
Okay, cool. Hopefully we'll get some questions. Yeah.
Okay, the first one we've got came on email. Are people moving to Seattle to take advantage of all of the services here?
Do you mind if I take this one?
Go for it.
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest myths about the homelessness issue in our community. So the short answer is no. It's not a concept of free-addle. That doesn't exist. People are not, in fact, moving into Seattle to take advantage of the services. So here's the actual data. McKinsey did an incredibly robust data-driven report recently. It was published about a year ago. They did this pro bono because they, too, felt a lot of passion about this issue. So as it turns out, 81% of the people who are experiencing homelessness right now in King County actually have been in Seattle for a year or more. In fact, over 50% of them have been in Seattle, in King County, for 5 years to even being born and raised in Seattle. So no, people are not moving in here just to take advantage. I mean, these are our neighbors, our perhaps former coworkers, they're friends, they're people we know. And so, again, that's why I sort of begin and end from a place of compassion.
James asks, I've heard people say things like, I see homeless people using iPhones outside their tents. Doesn't that mean they can get out of homelessness if they want to?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I'm sure you do as well, that, I see somebody with a phone or a certain pair of shoes. And, I think it's always important to remember that folks experiencing homelessness are often given materials. Some of them participate in subsidized programs that might give them a phone or another tool. And often the phone, much like for you and me, really is the one thing that is keeping them in connection with other folks. And the thing that might be helping them get a job, get connected to case managers, learn about housing opportunities, or just stay in touch with friends and family. And that connection is so important, especially when you're struggling with homelessness. So, I think it's important not to judge people, to really understand that you don't know where that phone came from. You don't know if that phone is actually working, right? And that if they are using it, that might be the one tool they have to stay connected.
Got a question from Heather. Will Seattle or other cities in the U.S. start legalizing drugs like heroin and putting programs in place like Switzerland or Portugal, which have been hugely successful?
Do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, well, Heather, I don't actually know too much about some of the trade-offs, but one of the things that's sort of an adjacent topic is about safe injection sites. I know that has been a huge hot topic for a lot of people because it's a little scary, right? For people who don't use illicit drugs, to walk by a needle, that's a super scary thing. Now there's something that's very counterintuitive about safe injection sites, at least the data that I've seen. And I've been sort of sharing a link to a great, very data-driven NPR piece about it that came out a couple of years ago about the Insight site in particular in Vancouver, which is the one that I think those of us who are in the Northwest are probably the most familiar with. And that is that it's not a clear win. Obviously, it's not an optimal situation that people are, a certain percentage of the population, general population and the homeless population, are using illicit drugs. But the data, the research over a long period of time following 1,500 users at or near the site would suggest that these sites, safe injection sites, actually save lives. It sounds totally counterintuitive, but they save lives, and they also give health workers the ability to onboard users to health services and rehab services. So it is not really a matter of, oh, we're not showing enough tough love, or we're being too soft on criminals. You know, and there's some complexity in unpacking that, because first of all, drug use is something that is not limited to the homeless community. And that's probably one of the main issues that I do have with the recent Como piece, is are we over conflating those issues? So not a direct answer to your question, Heather, around whether drugs should be legalized and what the trade-offs are there. I don't know enough about it, but on a specific issue that I know our community cares a lot about, and I know that the Como piece touched on, is safe injection sites. And I think that the research has pointed to the fact that they are net positive. And I think we need to be data-driven about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got one that'll be good for you, Jonathan. Crystal asks, how can we encourage people with privilege in the Seattle area, particularly those in the tech industry, which has ultimately led to huge displacement in urban cities across the country, to take responsibility and take action?
Yeah, I'll say that, well, first, it's the premise of the question, while I appreciate, I don't necessarily agree 100% with it, in the sense that I would probably word it a little bit differently. Yes, Seattle has been a beneficiary of a lot of growth. We are, in fact, literally the fastest growing city in North America. And that's something that actually I think we should be very proud of, and why, you know, kind of take this clear position, Seattle's not dying. And yes, a great, vast part of that growth is because of the tech ecosystem, the incredibly vibrant tech ecosystem that I'm a part of, that has contributed to that growth. Now, is it the fault of tech that there are so many homeless? Well, no. I think, but however, that does not absolve us of responsibility, and that's actually why I've agreed to be the campaign chair this year for United Way of King County. Is perhaps I could be persuasive, perhaps I could lead by example, but as one of the examples, as one of the beneficiaries of the tech ecosystem, having been in the tech industry my whole life, I've worked at Microsoft, I've worked at Google twice, I've done multiple startups, I'm the co-founder and chair of GeekWire. I mean, I sort of represent tech in many ways, that's part of my persona, that I hope to show that, hey, there is a path for us to lean in and help, and there is a responsibility on all of our parts. And I would say that I've learned so much from the amazing folks at United Way of King County about philanthropy, about effective philanthropy versus altruism, about segments of the community that have already been activated versus that are still a little inert. And yeah, I think the tech industry could be less inert and activate more. And talk to me. I can help onboard you to a lot of really great things. A lot of great solutions.
I love that. And I think, you know, one great example recently has been Microsoft, right? Mm-hmm. Microsoft has committed $500 million to really building a lot of affordable housing, right? Amazing, and dedicated a portion of that to homelessness, specifically eviction prevention. Mm-hmm. And they've really rallied many other tech leaders to do some work in Olympia to pass legislation around this. So that's just one example of how the tech community can get engaged. Yeah.
And I want to just say one thing, if I may. I know a little time crunch, but I feel so passionate about this. The way that we get engaged, if this question is really about the tech community, doesn't necessarily have to be the way that the tech community does it. We don't need more apps per se that somehow help the homeless. I mean, there's plenty of that stuff, and it's great. What we need are to double down on solutions that are currently working. And things like the United Way's Streets to Home program, which has proven to make huge dents every single year and bigger dents every year, and thousands of people getting them off the streets and into a home. And when they're sheltered, they have a almost 90%, a near 90% chance of staying housed. Things like Home Base, which is in a partnership between the United Way and the Mariners, and people like John Stanton and Fred Rivera, who've taken great leadership on the issue, where they've identified that actually eviction prevention is the highest yield node, and that if you can focus on that, that is way cheaper than you wait until somebody is in fact homeless and then you have to take care of that. So I think there are a lot of solutions that are working, that the tech industry, if you care and you're passionate, just plug into those.
Okay, Jennifer asks, can you talk about government spending locally? What's working? What's not working?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Jennifer. What we know is when we look at homelessness overall, our community spends anywhere from $150 to $200 million annually to address the homelessness crisis. And I'm going to say something that no one wants to hear, which is it's simply not enough. What we know is we have an incredibly large affordable housing crisis, and that until we address that, we're going to continue to see tents on our streets and people sleeping outside. So we need to double down on what's working. We know that the city and county and local suburban governments have done a tremendous job in recent years of really aligning their contracts and performance measures for local nonprofits, which is incredible. It's allowing us to do more things that really work. Things like permanent supportive housing and diversion programs, things that actually get people into housing. But we need to do a whole lot more of it. We need to scale what works, and in order to do that, we're going to need significant investments to make it happen.
Kayla asks, research shows that homelessness and poverty disproportionately affect people of color. How does the United Way work to address this disparity?
Yeah, that's a great question. Jonathan, jump in here. One of the things that I love about working at United Way is that we know you can't address the homelessness crisis without addressing poverty. The vast majority of people experiencing homelessness are experiencing homelessness because they are living below the poverty level. There may be other things that interfere, whether that be mental illness, domestic violence, a lost job, but poverty is sort of that common cause that they all have. So United Way, we do a lot of work to increase people's incomes. And we specifically focus on communities of color and the immigrant refugee population in order to do that, because we know that they continuously are not having the opportunities that others do. Things like housing discrimination and employment discrimination really are barriers for folks. And some of those are things we can do with philanthropic investments to address them, and some of it is policy change to make sure everyone has equal opportunity.
No, and I'd like to, that's a great answer, and I'd like to add to that there's a similar pattern across a lot of these big societal issues, whether it's sexism, whether it's the wage gap, whether it's poverty, that these things, what they all have in common is that they tend to affect people of color disproportionately. And what that means is that generally speaking, that there are sort of very big structural problems that we need to pay attention to, in addition to the more sort of tactical solutions. And so your answer is absolutely right. And I actually am really grateful that in the sort of nonprofit ecosystem here, that there are folks who, the Gates Foundation pays attention to kind of big, broad structural things affecting poverty. The United Way kind of is that sort of middle ground where we're looking at structural things, but then we're also looking at programs that can scale and work and boots on the ground. And then there are other organizations that are solely boots on the ground. So it needs that whole spectrum of thought. So,
you bet.
Yeah.
And with homelessness, it really starts at who's becoming homeless. So the more we can do on the prevention side to prevent people of color from becoming homeless, the more we're going to be able to address the disparities of homelessness, which is why we're so excited about this eviction prevention program, because we know that people of color are far more likely to become, to face evictions, and it's unacceptable, and there's something we can do about it.
Anthony asks, as an initial pessimist of this feed, first let me say, thanks for keeping this inspiring and loving. As someone who's experienced the struggle of poverty and homelessness without addiction or crime as a reason, how do we as the community of Seattle work on a global scale to dispel the myths and the stigmas that keep solutions from being upscale?
Well, mind if I take a stab there? Well, so that's actually part of what we're here to do. In a nutshell, I do think that we could scream louder. Really, the Seattle is Dying piece was an attempt, and I respect that that's the position that they wanted to take, but they screamed really loud. They have a loud platform, and that message got out. And I think that in equal measure, those of us who are homeless advocates, and we are have agency over a number of solutions that are working and scaling. We need to you're absolutely right. It's a very astute question. We need to get the message out to dispel some of these myths. It's a frustration point for me that we don't talk about it more and clarify these things. So yeah, it's a good call to action that we need to be screaming loud. Yeah.
I agree, and I think it's both important to recognize that many people experience homelessness, whether they be moms and dads, young kids, veterans, seniors, aunties, uncles. And each and every one of them, they have a whole lot of value. And I think one of the things that bothered me about the Seattle is Dying piece is it's kind of other people, right? It's good homeless, bad homeless. No, every single person deserves a safe, decent, affordable place to live.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just to humanize a problem, I think it's in spirit of the question that was just asked. I mean, I've literally, in the course of being a tech entrepreneur and building companies, I have had people who had full-time jobs at a major brand name tech company who have a job, who may be like a test engineer, who is currently homeless and living in their vehicle. I have had someone who was a middle or upper middle manager at a major tech company in the area who is friends with someone at the company, and someone at the company may say like, hey, my friend so-and-so, what should he do? What resources should he turn to? And so again, it's really just kind of underscoring this point that it's not us versus them, it's not the other. We're all sort of interlaced, and there are neighbors and coworkers so yeah.
Okay, we've got another question about what do we think about Como's thesis that stricter policing and incarceration can address the problem of homelessness?
I've got some thoughts on that. So I am not an expert on law enforcement, but the fact of the matter is but I am a business person. So let me sort of put it in terms of cost. So as it turns out, it costs sort of the criminal justice system, and this is not even a fully burdened number, but maybe this is even bad enough, about $60,000 per person per year to keep someone jailed or incarcerated in a city jail or a county jail. Okay, I don't think that number goes down if it's a state penitentiary. So, but about $60,000 a year, and that's not fully burdened because it doesn't account for the cost, to the families and also to the legal system, all of that stuff. But let's contrast that with a different number, which is that it costs about an average of about $13,400 to actually provide permanent supportive housing for someone who's experiencing homelessness. So I'm not saying we should put up with criminal activity, but in terms of the cost there's a whole other issue that was asked earlier, which is the cost of incarcerating non-violent criminals. And that's a much bigger society topic. But the specifics in our region of this is how much it costs to incarcerate someone versus this is how much it costs to house them, and then with wraparound services, onboarding, rehab, and health services, I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. So that's one potential answer to this problem.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think it's important to remember, if somebody is committing violent crimes, assaulting people, that's a crime.
That's a crime.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you should go to jail for that and go through the legal process for that. But so often what happens is people experiencing homelessness, and particularly true for people of color, are arrested for petty crimes. But it's really about being homeless.
Yeah.
It's where they might sleep. It's public urination.
Yeah.
It's,
Lauren, can you talk about, isn't it like, even if you just are sitting on a sidewalk, there was or is a city ordinance, that's a petty crime. That's like some sort of violation, and you can get cited and be fined, and yeah.
And anytime you get a fine, if you're experiencing homelessness, that's one more thing, right?
Yeah.
It's one more thing you have to pay back. And so I think what we're seeing is many of the courts now are saying, no, you can't arrest people for being homeless and sort of sleeping outside if you don't have another alternative.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the takeaway that sometimes gets missed is, why are these folks outside? It's because they don't have anywhere to go often, right? Our shelters are full, and we are not keeping up with the demand for those services. So, we want to be really clear that, when there is violent crime, that's where the police and the legal system come in, but we cannot arrest our way out of homelessness.
You're referring to the recent ruling or decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the jurisdictionally there, like the West Coast, like Alaska, all the way to California. And so at that level, they are ruling on constitutionality. And I guess I'll put it in sort of a more patriotic way, which is, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are very American ideals. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is saying it's unconstitutional to just, pick somebody up and cart them off somewhere else if you cannot, as a city or a county, provide for affordable housing for them. That's unconstitutional, and I agree. So I would argue it's a very American idea that we have a balance here in terms of how we handle people in the streets.
Great.
Graham points out that so many people are living in their vehicles. The point in time count said 53% are unsheltered or in vehicles. How does United Way feel about providing space to, have 3,000 people in their vehicles living?
Yeah, there's no question that we as a community need to do more, both for people that are, living in tents, living outdoors, living in their cars. We are going to, as a community, need to find places for people to be so that they are safe, so that they have access to restroom facilities and hygiene facilities, and so that they have access to case management and other supports. I think where so often the challenge comes, whether it be in opening up more shelters, opening up things like our community centers, or opening up big parking lots where people can park, is no one seems to want it in their backyard, right? And I think we're gonna have to give a little as a community. We can't both not want to see people in tents or in cars, and say, well, we can't do this in my backyard.
That's right.
We're gonna need it in everybody's backyard. We've got a whole lot of folks here.
Yeah, that's right. You can't keep saying no. And I think that as most people know, this is a great question. Vehicle residency is, in fact, the fastest growing segment of the homeless population. And there's a reason for that, right? Many of these people, they have jobs, not just smartphones, but they have jobs and laptops and lives and kids who are going to school, and they are living in their vehicle because they simply can't afford their apartment, or they got evicted. And you can get evicted after being $25 short and 3 days late on your rent around here. And so
Washington legislature can change that this year.
That's right, you can change it this year. And so my point being is that it's so easy to get evicted, and once you have that eviction on your record, you really have no option to live in your car. And so, and as you alluded to from the earlier question, your problems can compound so quickly if you park. Then you get a bunch of parking tickets, and if you can't pay them, then you get towed, and then the fine is on a per foot basis, and there's many hundreds of dollars, and so the problem very quickly compounds. So you're exacerbating the problem if, as you said, Lauren, if all you're saying as a neighbor is no, no, I don't, want to see this happen. No, I don't want to see a head tax, which I also said no to for different reasons. But if you keep saying no to things, what do you say yes to? Anyway, not a direct answer to the question, would the United Way support, more parking for vehicles? I would like to see things move in that direction, and that's a discussion topic, yeah.
Yeah, and we all need to say yes in my backyard a little bit more.
That's right, yeah.
Marik says, how much can be done? It seems like there's an entity or a system with much more power than what we've been able to muster. It seems like when we, the regular person, get a leg up, the boot comes down. There's some new challenge seemingly built with the already rich in favor.
Man, that's a powerful question, isn't it?
I wonder if this is a leadership question, and so the good news is that There are a lot, and this is part of the earlier question that how can we get the stuff that's working, getting stuff demythized, and that is that there are in fact a lot of things that are working, and a lot of solutions that are moving the needle, and I think, I know I don't have a crystal ball, but it does feel like that we're making greater and greater ground on the problem, and that the problem is starting to plateau. Like if you look at the top of the funnel, which is the sheer volumes of people that are entering the state of homelessness as a result of the lack of affordable housing and raising rents and other factors, that is in fact slowing, right? And so if we continue on these solutions that work, at some point those lines will cross. And I think that this is in fact a solvable problem. So I don't feel the boot coming down on my neck. I want to be respectful of why the person asking the question feels that way. I want to better understand the question better at maybe a later opportunity. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the reality is we know what ends homelessness. It's housing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what your situation is, housing is the solution. But I heard something deeply personal in that, which is sort of the, whether it be systemic poverty, cuts to safety net programs, cuts to, people who are working hard every day, trying to get ahead, and then they fall, and it sometimes can feel really, really challenging to get ahead. And, I think this is where elections really matter, right?
Yeah.
It's who is in office and making policies at a city, state, and federal level. We've got federal debate going on right now about how to utilize the food stamp program, or SNAP. That could have a huge impact on this population. And I think our job at United Way is to really be clear about policies that are going to protect people experiencing homelessness and living in deep poverty, push those forward, and develop the leadership so that we can do those big, good solutions at scale.
Yeah, that's great. And you reminded me of something, if I could add to it, which is all about leadership and who's in office. A lot of the chatter that I hear on social media and my own feed from very, very thoughtful, smart people whom I'm friends with, and maybe we don't always agree on exactly the same things, and that's great. That's why it's fun to be friends with you all. But some of the chatter is around city leadership and is the city doing the right thing about the problem? And I can't speak for, I'm not an elected official, I don't know very many of them, but here's the thing, right? I have this idea right now on this issue, which is all around what are you doing? It's really good to rage against the machine, it's great to be angry, it's great to be passionate, but what are you doing? And with regards to elected officials or city leadership, are you making your voice heard in a way that's constructive, where are you helping someone better that you think is better campaign and get into office? What are you doing with at the ballot box? And so those are the things that I hope to sort of convert any the anger and frustration into verbs that move us forward, right? Into doing.
You bet. I agree.
We've got 2 minutes left, and one more question has come via email that we'll turn to. Thank you so much for addressing these questions and thoughtful discussion. What does United Way think it's going to take? What can we focus on to truly make a difference in this crisis?
I'll start, and then you add in. I mean, again, we know what the solution is. It's housing, and it's different types of housing for various people, right? For folks that have really had a really tough time, maybe they have been chronically homeless, and it's they have a disabling condition. They're going to need long-term support, and that's where permanent supportive housing comes in. We know how to do it. We've got great organizations in our community like DESC and Plymouth Housing Group. We need to scale that model. For many others, it's about getting them access to housing and work. Many people experiencing homelessness are working, they want to work, and many of them have to work in order to be able to get housing. So investing in solutions like those types of programs are really important. But at the end of the day, we need such a significant amount of affordable housing in our community and a really strong and stable safety net. So what we need to do is advocate. At a state level, we have the opportunity to do that right now, whether it be for the Housing Trust Fund or the Housing and Essential Needs Program. Those are really critical programs that can help keep people in their homes and get more people into their homes now. And in the long term, we're gonna need to come together as a community to find significant resources to build a whole heck of a lot more affordable housing. And it's gonna have to be in your backyard, in my backyard, in everybody's backyard, but that's the way that we're gonna do this.
I really don't have too much to add there, and so I'll just wrap up and say that I'll sum it up the sort of the multiple solutions that I have to offer on that question as we need more people doing more. Again, think about what your verbs are. What are you doing? It's great to externalize our pain and frustration, but are you volunteering at a food bank or at a community resource exchange? Are you practicing effective philanthropy, which is you're trusting folks who have a deep sort of execution knowledge on programs that work, and you're giving your hard-earned dollars to them. In the case of United Way, 94 cents of every dollar that you give to the United Way goes directly to someone in need. So are you doing that? Are you voting the right people into office if you're frustrated with the things or with elected officials? What is it that you're doing? And so just yesterday I had a really great conversation with a developer, and we were talking about opportunity zones. And so I would also encourage people who are in a position to literally shape the very physical dimensions of our city to think about how can we do more of that. There's this gift in the form of opportunity zones in terms of being able to create so much value with the way that it works that we need to think more about that, to your point about building more affordable housing and with wraparound services.
So we need all of you. We encourage you to stay engaged, follow us on social media, start a conversation. We'd love to have coffee with you. Just sign Jonathan up for coffee with anybody. But we really do believe that it's going to take all of us to build a community where everyone has a home, but that it's absolutely possible if we all do it together. Thank you so much for joining in, and we hope to do this again in the future.
Thank you.